So the work for all of us. I'll start with my own story. When I was working as a young veterinarian for many years, I was struggling with the demands of the workload, with the demands of the people, with the emotional responsibility that I was carrying all the time for my clients, for myself, and for my patients. And so when my twins were born, I decided that I wasn't even going to try carry the load of being a mother to twins and of having to work even part-time. So I stayed home. But what happened is that all the stress that I was having at work transferred into my home life. I didn't know how to deal with the stress there either. And so it was hard for the first 8 months or so. It was very hard to hold it together, to be there all the time and to be kind and relaxed with those two babies. And that's when I came across the work. And it really changed my life. It really made me see how I could change my mind so that I could be more relaxed, and I could be much more loving to my kids and my husband, and what I needed to do to look after myself. So I grew in awareness and in honesty and in integrity, and that made me a much better parent, and a much better wife, and later a much better doctor. The process I used is called the work of Byron Katie, and it's the same process that I'm using now with all my clients that I'm working with, who I'm working with as the leaders work. And the process is really simple. And it's a process that asks you to start really listening to your own thinking. And that is the first step. And that's where you already start to grow in self-awareness, because most of the time we don't listen to our thinking. We just act on it. And that is reaction. That is not giving ourselves the time to assess the situation and walk forwards with clarity. So we believe those thoughts. We believe all the thoughts that are coming through our mind until such a moment that we look at one of them and go, is this even true? And so that's where the process starts. You ask, is this true? This thought that I'm having right now, is this true? And then if your answer is yes, this is true. I can feel it. It's like, it's giving me all these emotions. Like it's true in this world right now for me. And then the second question is, can you absolutely know that it's true? And it's almost the same question, but it's a slightly different emphasis, right? It's asking you to reassess, to get still. Just for a moment, get still. And ask yourself whether what you know, what you have known for this long, what everybody else is telling you is so, whether you can absolutely know if that's true. It's asking your honesty. So that is a meditation. These questions are meditations. They're asking you to be honest, to slow down and to look and to find out what is true for you alone. So the third question is, how do I react? What happens when I believe this thought? And in this question, what we find all those actions that we put out when we believe something about another person, right? So if I believe myself judged, then this is how I react. If I believe myself not listened to, then this is how I react. Like I get louder or I close down. If I believe I'm not respected, I will start to be loud or I will start to feel hurt. And then how do I treat other people like that when I'm believing these thoughts? And what do I think about myself? Do I believe it is true? Do I defend that it is not? What are your emotions that are coming up with this thought, that are flooding the body, that are creating more thoughts along the same lines? What is happening? How do you react when we believe this particular thought? The self-awareness in this question is incredible. You can take it all the way down back to your childhood. Most of those thoughts are repetitive. We've thought them hundreds of times before in different situations. Most of the thoughts that we put on our clients, we will put on our children, we will put on our mothers and fathers. We will put on our teachers eventually, on our best friends. Looking at this question, how do I react? What happens when I believe this thought? Really allows you to get to know yourself. And so it also takes courage to go there. And then the fourth question is, who would you be without that thought? And for a lot of people, this is really counterintuitive. It's like, what do you mean without that thought? That thought's there. It describes a reality. So again, like, stop. Stop for a moment. Who would you be without that thought? And maybe you don't know, and that's okay. And then just allow who you are if you don't know. Can you allow that? Most of the time you find that without the thought, you're more open. Your body is more open. Your breathing is more relaxed. You're able to look at another person with less judgment. And if you do this enough without judgment, in this fourth question, who would you be without this thought? You will start to find someone who's open-minded, who's confident, who's relaxed, who's kind. And that's you. And you'll start to feel at home in that. Because that is a heart. That's how your heart works. Connecting with people without those judgments. And this is different than just going like, I know I shouldn't judge. So like, I'm doing my best to not judge. I basically never judge people. That is suppression. That's not looking at who you would be. That is trying to be somebody different. And all you do is shove those thoughts into your cupboard and decide never to look at them again. And they go into the shadow. Every time you experience a judgment, you feel guilt. That is not the same. And then going back to the work, the last part of the work is the turnaround. This is where you use the thought that you've worked with and you turn it into its opposite. So there's an opposite, like, he doesn't listen to me. He does listen to me. So just looking at in that same moment, how is it true? And honestly, it's often so easy to find how it's true. Like having this fight with somebody and thinking like, he doesn't listen, he's not listening. And then when you step back and you go back to that situation and you see how he responds to you, you see how he's looking at you, you see how he's actually feeling defensive because he hears what you're saying. So it's not true. It's just simply not true. And then another turnaround for this particular sentence would be, I'm not listening to him. And can you see how that is true often? That when we're feeling defensive, when we're feeling not heard, we stopped listening. We did. And this is not about finding your guilt and your shame and your fault. This is simply about being aware of what is happening. Because when you gain that awareness, that's when you start to have options next time. When somebody says, you're not listening to me, and you can go, whoa, yes, that's true. The fight stops right there. And it's easy. I can find it all the time. My kids have trained me because I told them one time, you're right, I didn't listen. And they will come and bring it back to me every time I do it again. And I can see it. And so when I need them to listen to me, they will. Because they trust me. They trust my honesty. And they trust that I can be vulnerable. And so I show them how that works, how that feels good. And so they learn the same thing. That is the work. And Barakati says, you might think that there were a lot of thoughts to investigate, to let go of the stress. And she says, you're right. And that is why I called this the work. Because this is the work of our times. This is the work to stay sane. This is the work to stay connected and to stay loving and to grow ourselves. The work not to be dependent on other people for our well-being and our happiness. But to look here, look to ourselves so that we can connect with other people. My husband keeps saying, you can't explain this work. You have to do it. It's like when you explain it, it always sounds like, you're just doing brainwashing. You're just trying to brainwash. And you know what? That's true. It's a mind wash. And why wouldn't you wash your mind? Like you keep your body clean. You brush your teeth every day. Why wouldn't you try and keep your mind clean? Keep it clean from those negative thoughts. It's a tool for you to keep your mind clean so that you can see through it clearly, that it can be a very, very powerful tool in your everyday life. And so that you can find ways to live your best life and not get buried in negativity and stress and overwhelm and fear in this world that looks so crazy. Because you don't have to. This is your work.